So my first day working in San Francisco, I worked in an office building right down on 3rd Street, right near the Giants Stadium. And like dozens of other people, I parked my truck in the spaces right out front of the building on 3rd Street. Little did I know that right around 4 o'clock, those parking spots become a commute lane and any vehicle left there gets towed. So I come out to hop in my truck at the end of my first day working in the city, and my truck's gone. And I look to my right, and there it is, strapped to a tow truck in traffic down 3rd Street. Now, this is my first day in the city. I don't know where anything is. I have no idea where that truck is gonna end up. And I did what any country mouse in the city would do, and I panicked and ran down the street chasing my truck. The driver stopped at a stoplight, and I hopped up on his truck and jumped into the cab and asked him if I could go with him because I had no idea where my truck was gonna land. Now, he was nice enough to let me go, and several $100s and several hours later, I was back on the street with my vehicle, and that set the tone for my experience living and working in San Francisco, and it didn't really get better from there. Living in San Francisco can feel like that. Fast-moving, expensive, unpredictable, and honestly, kind of exhausting if you don't know the rules. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. Over the last several years, tens of thousands of people have left the city. So in today's video, we're gonna explore why. We're gonna go over the top 7 reasons people are leaving San Francisco in 2025, based on real conversations, hard data, and personal experience. Now look, there's a chance of this video seeming like I'm hating on San Francisco, and that's not what this is. I enjoyed my time there when I lived there. There's a lot to recommend the city. Music from all over the world, food from all over the world. There's always something going on, and it is a very, very beautiful place to live. But at this point, the metrics are trending towards the squeeze not being worth the juice. It certainly wasn't for me, and now the data shows it's not for tens of thousands of you as well. This is going to be a 2-part series. In this one, we're going to go over the reasons why people are leaving, but make sure you click like and subscribe so you don't miss the second part, which says, where are people going and where is there a better and more affordable life waiting for you here in California? All right, let's get right into the 7 reasons people are leaving San Francisco. Reason number 1 people are leaving San Francisco is the sky-high cost of living. Now, more than any other single factor, this is the one that my clients note when they tell me why they left the city and relocated to my area, and that is how much it costs to live there. Now, in another section, we're gonna go over the cost of housing, but look, the cost of housing is gonna cost people sometimes in excess of $114,000 a year in San Francisco. Childcare, over $36,000 a year. It's absolutely insane what it costs to live there. And that's not to mention if you leave your house and you want to eat out and buy a bus ticket and do anything with your day, you're going to be $100 to $200 lighter by the time you get back in the door. It is just a wildly expensive place to live. Now, if you take a modest middle class lifestyle, the lifestyle we are all shooting for, I want to own a home, be able to afford to pay for soccer for my kids, maybe some music or swim lessons. I want to be able to put a little bit away for retirement. And I want to be able to afford to have a decent vacation on my 2 weeks off a year. We're not talking about living a baller lifestyle here. We're just talking about living a basic, enjoyable life. When you tally all that up, for living in San Francisco or the greater San Francisco Bay Area, you're talking about $350,000 to $450,000 a year in annual income a family would need to have to support a family of 4 in that kind of lifestyle. That is absolutely bananas. In many other parts of California, that kind of money sets you up for an incredible lifestyle. Absolutely incredible. And we'll talk more about that in video 2. But at $350,000 to $450,000 just to lead a decent life, like I said before, for a lot of families, the squeeze really isn't worth the juice. And so this is pushing them out of the city. Now, the rest of the factors add up and stack up to make this even a better choice, because if we can alleviate some of the things we really don't like about living in the city, and we can do it at half the price or a third of the price, why wouldn't we do that? There are areas of California where you can support a family of 4 in this kind of lifestyle at just $200,000 a year. So $350,000 to $450,000 in San Francisco, $200,000 to $250,000 in some of the areas I'm going to talk about in video 2. It begins to make it a no-brainer for people to leave the city. And that's why almost 62,000 of them have left in the last 5 years. Now, again, a little bit of spin alert. If you take that number in abstraction, it sounds worse than it is. With influx and leaving, the actual net loss has been about 31,000 people over the last 5 years in San Francisco. But that's still an incredible loss of people in the city, and that trend is expected to continue here in 2025 because of these 7 reasons. If you've made it this far and you're getting anything at all out of this video, hit the like button, click subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss another video with crucial information to help you with your relocation, including part 2 of this video, where I'm going to tell you the best places people have found to go to from San Francisco to get that lifestyle we talked about in the last section at half the price or better. All right, now back to our 7 reasons why people are leaving San Francisco in 2025. Reason number 2 people are leaving San Francisco in 2025 are unattainable home prices. The cost of owning a home in San Francisco is absolutely ridiculous. And again, this is right up there in those top 3 reasons my clients list for why they left the Bay Area. Now look, it's no secret, I'm in real estate, so these numbers mean a lot to me, but the median home price as of the recording of this video in San Francisco proper is $1.47 million. That is bananas. Now in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, depending on where you are, that median home price bounces between that 1.47 million and 1.7 million. So it doesn't get much better in the few communities surrounding the city either. Now this is simply unaffordable for most Americans. You would need to make, if you followed the rules of having your housing cost no more than 30%, which I don't believe that's a realistic rule at all in California or in 2025. So don't follow that rule. And I've got other videos on the channel about that. But if you did, that would mean you'd have to make 400 grand just to afford the house. That's it, just to qualify for a loan for the house. Now, of course, you can shift that metric dramatically. And like I said in the last segment, you need $350,000 to $450,000 to afford the house and your whole lifestyle there. But that still is an insane amount of money, and an insane amount of money for a house. Now, the average age of a home in San Francisco is 87 years old. So not only are you going to pay $1.4 million at the median, which means there's a lot of houses that cost a lot more than that, but you're also getting a house that is nearly 100 years old, or in some cases over 100 years old. We are talking about houses that have all of the toxic chemicals from all of recorded human history that we've put into houses. And we're talking about houses that have knob and tube wiring in them. We're talking about very outdated homes and systems that not only do you have to pay $1.4 million for, but you're going to dump a bunch of money into them to bring them up to snuff, make them safe for your family, and make them what you want them to be. Now, in the other parts of California, we're going to talk about video 2, $1.4 million will get you a 3,000 square foot home with a massive party backyard with a swimming pool and an outdoor kitchen and a quarter to a half of an acre to several acres in some cases to live on, where you can have, boats, toys, RVs, animals, swimming pool, where your kids can live this amazing lifestyle for 1.4 million. Or, hey, how about we don't spend 1.4 million and we spend 500 to 800,000 and we get a 2,500 square foot home on a quarter of an acre, still with a backyard swimming pool that was built in the 2000s and is in pretty great shape, and you can just move in and put the furniture down and get on with your life. Now, this is what's on offer if you're willing to move out of the city. And as I said, tens of thousands of you already have. And this is one of the major reasons why. All right, right about now, you're wondering why you should be listening to me about San Francisco, real estate, or anything at all, really, and that's a pretty fair question. My name's Rich Curtis with eXp Realty, and I've been selling homes in California for over 20 years now in the greater Sacramento area and El Dorado County, in markets ranging from the Great Recession to the COVID market insanity and everything in between. So when it comes to California real estate, I've got you covered. In this case, I grew up in the Bay Area, in San Jose. I've lived in San Francisco, in Berkeley, and I now reside in El Dorado County. So I know intimately the communities we're talking about today. I know the reasons why I left and the reasons why so many of my clients have left for a better and more affordable lifestyle. All right, so to that end, let's get back into talking about the 7 reasons people are leaving San Francisco in 2025. All right, before we jump into criteria number 3, I wanted to let you know I always like to over-deliver. So we are going to go over these 7 reasons people are leaving San Francisco in 2025. But at the end, I'm going to give you one more bonus thing to think about for you young families, why it might be time for you to consider getting out of the city. So if you're a young family, make sure to stick around to the end for that. So, number 3 reason why people are leaving San Francisco in 2025 comes down to traffic, parking, and public transit problems. Look, there's no getting around it. San Francisco is not an easy place to get around. It is slow and arduous to get anywhere and do anything in the city these days, and it's getting worse. The average San Francisco resident spends 81 hours annually stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. 81 hours of their life that they can never get back, just sitting there waiting to get somewhere. That alone is enough to make somebody like me get the heck out of the city. At peak traffic times, it can take 26 minutes to go 6 miles. Where I live, it takes 6 minutes to go 6 miles, unless you get stuck behind a farmer or someone who let their goats out running around the road. But traffic isn't really a part of our life here. 26 minutes to go 6 miles would absolutely make my head explode. So the better alternative for most of you is to use public transportation. But unfortunately, the public transportation system in San Francisco has faced some significant challenges post-COVID. They're only up to about 74% of pre-COVID ridership right now. They haven't bounced back to pre-COVID levels, and that's put them in the position of having a $51 million budget shortfall leading into the summer of 2025, which means they're going to cut services by 2% across the city in terms of delivering public transit services in the summer of 2025. Now that's going to mean longer wait times, less buses, less BART trains, and more frustration and more crowding. Who among us who have lived in the Bay Area haven't spent a night trying to get home with people smashed up against all sides of us, just trying to get a non-stinky, clear breath of air for a couple minutes while we try to get home? We've all had that experience with the trains being overcrowded, and that's about to get a whole lot worse in the summer of 2025. And for a lot of the San Francisco residents, they're done with it. It's time. They don't want to deal with it anymore. So these factors are a big contributing factor to why people are leaving the city in 2025. Reason number 4 people are leaving San Francisco in 2025 is due to crime and public safety concerns. Now look, this one might be actually a little bit of a leftover or a feeling rather than based on the data and facts, so let's break it down. It's still affecting people, but this one may be a little irrational or unreasonable. Just depends on what part of the city you're living in and what your experience has been. Of course, if you've been a victim of any sort of crime, then you don't care about the numbers, you just want out. But to be fair to San Francisco, between 2024 and 2025, they've seen a 14% drop in bodily crime, in violent crime in the city, and a 24% drop in property crime in the city. So things are getting better. Of course, during COVID, things got a little weird and crime peaked, but things are getting better and shifting in the right direction. Unfortunately, for a lot of the people living there, they've lived there for a long time and they've experienced higher crime rates and perhaps been the victim of a crime. And like I said before, if that's the case, the numbers really don't matter. You want out, you want to go to a place that is safe for your family. And even a decrease in the crime numbers doesn't mean it's the same as other places. In the place where I live, you have less than 1% chance of being a victim of a bodily or violent crime. That's a major difference than living in the Bay Area. So for a lot of people, this alone, this one reason is disqualifying, and it's time to get out of the city. But again, just to be fair to San Francisco, this is improving, so I wouldn't base your decision on this factor alone. Reason number 5 people are leaving San Francisco in 2025 is homelessness and urban decay. Now look, I know this is a sensitive subject, and I hate the thought of anyone being on the streets and not having a roof over their head. I think we all should have tremendous compassion for those people and remember that we never know when our life circumstances could change and we could find ourselves one of them. So as a society, I deeply believe we should be committed to helping these people off the streets find shelter, find food, and take care of them. That being said, when there are large tent encampments in your neighborhood or on the paths that you have to walk your kids to school and do other things, it can be emotionally challenging and it can be something that makes you fear about crime and safety, and a lot of Bay Area residents deal with this. Now, this is another area that is improving. In fact, the number of residents that are homeless in the San Francisco area is just shy of 8,000 as of recording this video in the summer of 2025. But over the last 12-month period, they've decreased the number of tents in the city by 222, making that a 62% decline in the tents within the tent encampments in the city. A 62% improvement is a pretty big deal. I think the city is working really hard on this. That being said, when I go down to visit friends in the city, I still frequently drive by tent cities on my way into their neighborhoods. And it isn't something that is very enjoyable to deal with in your day-to-day life. I have a good friend on the island of Alameda, and when I come from the mainland onto the island, there are two prominent tent cities that I see every time I go there. So this is a big deal. And for residents of the city, if you paid $1.4 million, the median home price in that area, and you have to walk past homeless tent encampments to bring your kids to school and back, that might not be an experience you want to have for your $1.4 million investment. And this is driving a lot of people out of the city. And homelessness isn't the only issue. San Francisco is facing significant urban decline, especially in its downtown areas, like many cities in the state of California and in the country, frankly, are post-COVID. But when it comes to ground floor retail space in downtown San Francisco, at the end of 24, it had a 15.7% vacancy rate. Now, Union Square, the iconic shopping district, had a vacancy rate of over 22% by the end of 2024. Now, when it comes to the San Francisco Center Mall, a hustling, bustling center of shopping in the city, things are looking even worse with an over 50% vacancy rate, with the likes of Nordstrom's and Michael Kors and Adidas pulling out. They have gone from a $1.2 billion valuation at the end of 2016 to a $190 million valuation at the end of 2024. That is a rapid and significant decline, and cities don't do well when there's a bunch of vacant, boarded up shops on the ground floor in their city center. So this is a big thing to pay attention to, and it doesn't look much better for San Francisco office space. When it comes to office space, at the end of Q1 in 2025, San Francisco had a 35.8% vacancy rate in its office space citywide. Now, when it comes to the iconic financial district in downtown San Francisco, they had a 33.9% vacancy rate. That is a massive vacancy rate. Over 1/3 of the office space in the financial district is currently vacant in San Francisco, and that trend is likely to get worse as we continue. And this vacancy rate and this urban decline and these empty storefronts and these boarded up buildings is a big reason my clients cite for wanting to get out of the city. If by the end of this video you still aren't sure if San Francisco is right for you, or if it's time to leave, or you're looking for some personalized recommendations on where might be the best place to land for your family in California, feel free to reach out to me via the contact information on your screen or in the description down below. Like I said, I've been selling homes here in the state for over 20 years now. I've helped hundreds of families just like yours decide where to land in California, and I'm always happy to help. All right, now back to our last two reasons and our one bonus discussion about young families in the city to help you decide if you want to join the tens of thousands of people that have left the city, or if you're still happy and you're going to stay put. Reason number 6 that people are leaving San Francisco is because remote work has made living there optional. Look, if you're a tech worker who had a tech job, or a financial worker that had a financial job in the city, you used to have to be there in the office all the time. So you had to live in the city. And the commute times are absolutely insane if you live out of the city and try to commute into the city for work on a daily basis. And that drove a lot of people to make the decision to just accept the high cost of housing, the high cost of living, and all these other factors we've talked about because they had to for their job. Now, with remote work having been massively on the rise, of course, during COVID, and a lot of it remaining, which has led to that vacancy rate in office space that we talked about in the last section, and companies not forcing huge chunks of their workforce back into the office space here 5 years on from COVID, a lot of those people can maintain the jobs they've always had, but live in a place where they can afford to raise a family. So remote work has made it so maybe I don't have to put up with the financial squeeze of living in the city. If the squeeze isn't worth the juice, I don't have to put up with it anymore. I can keep my job and move to a place where things are easier and more affordable for my family. And this one factor alone isn't necessarily the reason people are leaving San Francisco in 2025, but it has facilitated that. It has made that choice easier because they get to keep their employment and move somewhere more affordable. Reason number 7 that people are choosing to leave San Francisco in 2025 is the relentless pace of life, peer pressure, and hustle culture that's built into life in the city. Look, it's an expensive place to live, and if you're gonna live there, you gotta make a lot of money. If you're gonna make a lot of money, you gotta hustle. So there is a lot of pressure to work, buy, keep up with the neighbors, make an incredible amount of money. And the sacrifices, the family sacrifices, the time sacrifices, the health sacrifices that people have to make to participate in this hustle culture are just assumed to be worth it by the rest of the community because everybody's doing it. This is how we live here. And sometimes it just feels normal. You've been there so long, it feels normal. But if you take a step out, if you come to a community with a slower pace of life, where people are focusing on making just enough to have a good life, where people are focusing on having time with their kids over having time at their job, you get some perspective on that, and you might decide that that relentless pace of life, that hustle culture, that pressure to keep up, keep going, keep producing, just isn't worth it for you and your family. Not all places in California have that pace of life. Not all places in California have that pressure. Not all places in California buy into that hustle culture that, in my opinion, is so toxic for people, especially for people like me who are an entrepreneur. Hustle culture really pushes on us to go, produce, make tons of money. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a massive income. Well, what if you just want to be an entrepreneur so that you can make just enough and have a lot of time with your family? There are places in California that really respect that kind of thinking. And for a lot of my clients, they either cited this as a reason for why they left, or they cited this as a joy of where they landed, meaning they didn't know this was why they were leaving. But once they got out of that hustle culture, once they lived in a community that is different, they felt, whoa, what a release and what a relief it is to not have to keep up like that. There are places in the state where a backyard barbecue is shorts, flip-flops, and bringing in a 6-pack of beer and some chips and salsa. Now, when I lived in San Francisco, backyard barbecues were people dressed to the nines and bringing in expensive handmade pate and expensive bottles of wine and champagne. Things are just different there, and there's pressure to spend and keep up, and you don't necessarily have to buy into that. And like I said, tens of thousands of you have decided not to over the last 5 years. All right, like I told you, I like to over-deliver, and I want to have one more data point and discussion with you for the young families watching today. And that is the population decline that I mentioned, 62,000 total, but a net 31,000 person loss in the city over the last 5 years has not been an even age distribution. Over 37% of that population loss was people from the age of 25 to 35. Overwhelmingly, it's the young families that left. And in that same period, demographically, people 65 and over had an influx into the city of 8.7%. So while the young people are leaving, the old people are moving in. Why? Cost of living. Some of these older people have been towards the end of their life and have amassed a larger amount of money and can afford the city lifestyle. So as young families are moving out, older people are moving in. What does this mean to you as young families? Well, look, if the numbers of kids enrolling in school go down, which they are in the city, then what the schools can deliver go down because their budget goes down. It means the neighborhoods are filled with less kids for you to play with, less play dates, less community infrastructure around having kids and around family life in the city. Now, if that trend continues, this means that San Francisco is going to be a much more elderly population, and it's just going to be a less friendly environment for raising children. Less friendly than it already is. I mean, let's face it, raising kids in an urban environment that costs a lot of money, where the parents have to be out working incredible hours just to afford a life for those kids, is already potentially a bit of a hard start. Now, if you add to that the other families fleeing, what is this going to mean for family community life in the city moving forward? I think that's something to consider and to look to other places in California that have a higher population of young families to build a community for your kids moving forward. Something for you to consider. All right, that wraps up our discussion of the 7 reasons why people are leaving San Francisco in 2025. 2025. I hope this has helped you understand this exodus from the city, and maybe it's helped you decide whether you want to stay put in San Francisco or whether you're ready to move on to someplace else with a more affordable lifestyle. Now look, like I told you, this is a 2-part series. So in part number 2, coming up next week, I'm gonna have for you some places to land in California to go to from San Francisco that will be much more affordable for your family. I'm gonna go over the reasons people are going to these places, the cost of living in these places, the types of homes you can afford in these places at less than half or a third of what it would cost you in the city, so you can start to dream or think about a place to go to from San Francisco. If you're watching this right when it came out, that video won't be linked here. But if you're watching this a little bit later, as soon as it's up, I'll put that video right up here in the corner. In the meantime, if you want to do a deep dive into what's happening in the real estate market in 2025 with all the crazy tariff business and the financial insanity, so you can decide what you should do in terms of selling in the city, buying somewhere else, then watch this video right here about our potential July 2025 perfect storm for real estate prices, or watch this follow-up video down here about price declines that are already showing statewide in California. If you'd like to look at some other places to live in the meantime for that next video comes out, you can click this playlist right here for my town versus town playlist for areas around the Central Valley and El Dorado County. All right, either way, thanks for watching. Thanks for making it to the end with me, and I'll see you on the next one.